But moving on to the final segment here, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the first round of the college football playoffs. So I'll be sharing my game summary on all four respective games that happened and translated in the first round of the college football playoffs. Now, I gotta say this right off the rip, right off the break. Even though it's nice to have 12 teams in the college football format, this is the first time that college football and the committee have tried this format out. Next year, it needs to be 8 teams. I think 12 teams is too much, and we saw that in the first round because all 4 games in the first round of the college football playoffs were blowouts. Again, in the 12 format thus far, we've seen some unnecessary teams get byes of Arizona State and Boise State, with them not even being top 4 teams in the country like Oregon and Georgia. They found themselves getting bye weeks in the first round, which they could have benefited playing in the first round. Maybe a team like Texas or Penn State could have benefited getting a bye week in the first round, but they won their games. But every college football game in round 1 was a blowout. Every home game, every home team won, and at some point were leading in the ball game by 20 points or more. So this, based off of what I've seen, I think they got to go to a 12-team or an 8-team format instead of a 12-team format. Based off of the quality games that we've got, I was so excited to watch the first round, and I still am excited to see how the rest of the tournament plays out. But the first round, from a fan standpoint, it just wasn't it, and might have been some unnecessary football that we got with some unnecessary teams getting in. But let's get into the game summary. So the first game, you saw Notre Dame defeat Indiana by a score of 27 to 17 in round 1. Now, the score should have been much more. I think Notre Dame could have ran up the score on Indiana, and at times I felt like I was watching this game, like they could score more than the points that they already did. But they did end up scoring 27 points on the Indiana Hoosiers. And Indiana, yeah, they scored 17 points, but in the fourth quarter, it was just a pity party. They had 3 points. They were just getting points on the board for pride at that point, because if Notre Dame didn't let up, they probably would have never scored a touchdown in this game. Now, Notre Dame was just a more physical team, the more dominant team. They got the defensive stops that they needed and controlled the pace of the game running the football. They got a tremendous backfield out there for Notre Dame, and also helps when you have a dual threat quarterback as well. Notre Dame actually rushed for a total of 193 rushing yards as a team against Indiana, a team that cannot stop the run in this game. So I thought Curtis Roque, the sensational transfer that has played well for Indiana all year long, I thought he would have played well and given Indiana a better chance to win this game and get going in the passing game, but that just didn't happen. And an outcome like this happens for an Indiana team that had a tremendous turnaround. But once again, this team really wasn't tested all year long. They had 11 wins, yes, but who did you beat? Strength of schedule matters in college football because you can punch your ticket to the playoffs, but if you're not playing good top-tier opponents and you only been tested once in the regular season, it's going to show when you play top-tier competition. Their only test that they had all year long in college football was against Ohio State, which they lost that game on the road, and they weren't tested since. So, easy win for Notre Dame. We're going to see what they could do in the next round against the Georgia Bulldogs. Next game, you had Penn State dominate SMU. They won this game by a score of 38 to 10. Now, Penn State, they just manhandled and dominated SMU and showed them why they didn't even belong in the dance in the first place. Pure belt to ass treatment. I mean, SMU, they couldn't adapt to the whiteout atmosphere, and the cold weather definitely played a factor for them being a university that plays out in Texas, coming down to Pennsylvania to the whiteout atmosphere at Penn State. And Penn State capitalized on every single mistake that SMU made, picking off Kevin Jennings a total of 3 times, 2 of them being returned for pick sixes in that ball game to help them win this game by a score of 38 to 10. This is another situation where I thought Penn State could have easily put up 50 points or more if they wanted to, but they played a little conservative on the offensive side of the ball. But the defense side of the ball really set the tone for them getting this victory against SMU. But a good win for Penn State. We're going to see how they do against Boise State in the next round. Honestly, watching this game, I know that the committee had their hands tied, whether it was SMU getting it or Alabama. I thought it was nice to give the committee to give SMU the nod. But I was watching this game, I was like, damn it, Alabama really could have benefited playing against Penn State. Not only for a quality game standpoint, but if it wasn't for SMU climbing all the way back in that ACC championship game against Clemson, overcoming a 17-point deficit and making the game close and only losing by 3 points, I don't think they would have made the playoffs. But a lesson learned here of why it should be an 18 format instead of a 12-team format next year. But we'll see what Penn State does. Now, in the next game, you had Texas defeat Clemson by a score of 38-24. Now, it's bad to say by the Texans beating Clemson 38-24 in a disappointing first round of the college football playoffs. This is actually the best game that we got when we seen an ACC team match up against an SEC team. And Texas was the much better overall team playing against Clemson. They won the battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball. The offensive line had their way run blocking and pass blocking. And their defensive side, the defensive front seven had their way against Clemson's offensive line. I mean, run blocking was tremendous for the Texas Longhorns. They ran the ball for a total of 292 rushing yards. And if it wasn't for Clay Klubnik trying to have Clemson fight back in this game and airing the ball out, playing hero ball, having over 300 passing yards, Texas probably could have scored 50 points or more on Clemson. And I had a feeling they were going to play conservative in this game, which Texas did. They didn't really allow Quinn Ewers to play hero ball. They leaned on the running game. Quinn Ewers did what he could. When he got his chance to pass the ball, really didn't do too much. Had a little over 200 passing yards, 1 pass touchdown, 1 interception to help Texas defeat Clemson. So I'll share my thoughts on what I believe will happen with Quinn Ewers. I'm going to tell you guys, though, off the rip, I don't know if he's ready for the NFL. Based off of what I'm seeing in big-time moments and big-time situations, I'm just going to say, I'll save this for a different day, but I think he could benefit for playing another year in college and transferring. But Clemson, they were lucky to even get to this point in their respective college football season because they overexceeded their expectations. After week 1, where they got dominated and blown out against Georgia, everybody knew this team wasn't a championship contending team, let alone an ACC championship contending team. With the help of Syracuse defeating Miami, them knocking off Cam Ward, one of the best prospects for the 2025 draft, that actually assisted Clemson to even get to the ACC championship against SMU. So they won that game, but ultimately just were in the college football playoffs for show. And I give credit to Dabo Swinney, but this Clemson Tigers program isn't where it used to be. In terms of a contending team that you could rely on to make the dance, they made the playoffs a lot of times under Dabo Swinney, but this is not a championship contending team anymore. And plus, they can possibly see Cade Klubnik go into the transfer portal to play somewhere else next year. But we'll see what they do in the next round. Now, final game you've seen Ohio, or when they play Arizona State, I should add. Now, in the final game you saw Ohio State defeat Tennessee by a score of 42-17. Now, Ohio State just steamrolled Tennessee by a score of 42-17, bouncing back from that frustrating loss that they had a few weeks ago against Michigan. And for all those TikTokers that were in the comments saying Tennessee was going to win, Ohio State can't beat an SEC team. Not only did they beat Tennessee, but they dominated them. Instead, had a statement victory for everybody else that's still in the dance for college football for the remainder of the playoffs. Now, Ohio State had a great game plan. Chip Kelly and company, play calling wise, they had a really good game plan, which I said for the blueprints for to get a victory against Tennessee, which would be aired out with Will Howard and get the pass catchers of Jeremiah Smith and Abuka going with their star-studded wide receivers, and they did that. And Will Howard had over 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, giving passing touchdowns to his pass catchers like Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Abuka. But Tennessee's standpoint, they just scared me because they ranked 60th in the country in offensive explosive plays. They really couldn't get anything going. And Nico, their redshirt freshman, yeah, he was effective running ball with 2 rushing touchdowns, showed some grit and determination there. But in order to defeat Ohio State, you had to put it together, the whole offensive recipe together. You couldn't just be running the football well and not passing the ball well. You had to be well doing both. So they failed to do that, and that's the reason why Tennessee was dominated the way they were by 42-17. And also, he was on the ground a lot with the front seven of Ohio State getting home to him several times in this ball game, having him under duress in the game. Now, this version of Ohio State. This is what I've been looking for. I want to see if they can bring this into the next round, because the next round is not going to be a cakewalk, and it's actually against a team that they lost to earlier in the season, that being Oregon. Now, I thought these two teams were going to play against each other in the Big Ten championship, but with Michigan knocking out Ohio State, that just didn't happen, with Penn State getting the ticket instead a few weeks ago. But if Ohio State brings that same fire, that same energy that they just had against Tennessee, I think that's a 50-50 game between them and Oregon, because it went down the wire the first time they played, and that was when Ohio State was on the road against Oregon, and Oregon won that game 32-31. So we're going to see what happens in the rematch. I think that's going to be the best matchup in the second round. It's a shame they got to play in the second round, but once again, that's what we get with having a 12-team format for the playoffs. So that is my college football round one summary, and that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Terry, signing off. Happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas to everybody that celebrates the holiday. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.